I know there are a lot of companies out there that have invested over the last few years in better security for their IoT devices. And until now, they haven't had a clear way to stand out from the crowd because everybody claims they're secure. But to have an independent certification that validates that you meet these requirements, that gives the consumer something to look for and the manufacturer an opportunity to stand out.
On this episode of Embedded Insiders, Rich is joined by Tobin Richardson, President and CEO of the Connectivity Standards Alliance, and Steve Hanna, Distinguished Engineer at Infineon Technologies, to discuss the CSA's recently launched IoT Device Specification 1.0, a one-stop solution for device certification for IoT manufacturers. Next, in our Engineering Heroes series, we're highlighting a hero for his involvement in a project related to the world-famous International Space Station. Daire McNamara, a director, project manager, and firmware developer at Emdalo Technologies, assisted Skycorp on the development of their intelligent space system interface with his contributions to microprocessor development infrastructure. But first, we insiders are discussing our thoughts on the recent announcement from the Connectivity Standards Alliance.
Coming back in from his triumphant tour traveling overseas, we have with us again Rich Nass. I'm Ken Briota, and we've also got Tiara Oliver, all of us from Embedded Computing Design here on Embedded Insiders. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us yet again.
I wasn't
How's everybody doing?
overseas.
Well, it's more fun if I say you were.
Well, I was overseas. I was on vacation. I was over the Gulf.
There you go.
I flew to Mexico, so I was over Gulfs, not overseas.
See, technically correct. The best kind of correct.
Technically correct, but had some nice downtime, and it's nice to be back. And back on the heels of an extremely significant announcement for our space. The drum roll, please. The Matter 1.0 security specification has now been officially launched, and I was extremely pleased to get two of the guys who were intimately involved with the development of this spec on a podcast with me, and I'd love for you to hear that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tiara, I hate to say I told you so, but obviously Rich is jealous that we talked about Matter last time we chatted.
I see.
Did you talk about Matter? Did you talk about me? Because I'm out.
A little bit of each. A little from column A, a little from column B.
Okay, all right. So on the podcast, I had Tobin Richardson, who is the president and CEO of the CSA, the Connectivity Standards Alliance, and Steve Hanna, a distinguished engineer from Infineon. And if you're following the spec at all or us at all, you know that these are the two guys who are like, I won't say the brains behind it, but there were over 200 brains behind this. And we talk a lot about how they had to herd cats. And it must have been a nightmare trying to get all these people to agree on stuff. But that's what we talked about in the podcast. And when they come on, since you won't be able to see them, you'll hear that it's after I introduce them, Tobin speaks first. So you'll recognize their voices.
That's awesome. I don't know Tobin, but I know Steve really well. And I know that he thinks deeply and often about security implications on these standards. And it'd be fun to maybe make him rank his favorite security standards sometime, because he's probably got a list already.
Well, he's been a regular on the other podcast that I do, the Embedded Executive. Every once in a while he pops on. We talk about the latest and greatest in security. But yeah, it has been his life at Infineon for many years now.
Yeah, he sort of informally co-chaired an old security summit for IoT that I used to run, and he was always a wealth of information on that. So you folks out there, make sure that you stick around and listen to that conversation. There's going to be a lot to get. Plus, Matter's just cool. I just think it's really a necessary and needed standard to like get up to full robust standard, because the smart home industry especially desperately needs this kind of interoperability that Matter offers. And quite frankly, I think that once it's sort of reaching scale, they're going to find applications in other spaces. It's not like interoperability isn't needed and Matter isn't robust enough to go into warehouse, industrial, enterprise uses elsewhere. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing it getting broader.
That's a good segue, because every time I talk to these guys, I ask about the industrial sector, and I did ask that on the podcast that year. As soon as we can figure out how to shut up.
All right. I'll take the hint.
Now, here's Rich, Tobin Richardson, and Steve Hanna discussing the recently launched IoT Device Specification 1.0.
Hey guys, you have a really exciting announcement that has just come out. I read it just the other day across my desk, but I want to hear it right from the horse's mouth. What exactly is it that you guys are doing?
Hey, Rich, great to be here and chat with you. Yeah, we're very excited. We just announced the Alliance's IoT Device Security Specification 1.0. And that comes with an accompanying certification program and product security verified mark. This groundbreaking initiative that we're announcing aims to establish a kind of a unified IoT cybersecurity standard and certification program, provides manufacturers a one-stop solution to certify their devices, and enables them to comply with multiple international regulations and standards more easily. And we're really excited. We built this program by consolidating requirements from the three most popular IoT cybersecurity baselines from the US, Singapore, and Europe into a single spec and cert program. So really excited to be announcing this.
Was there a less than 1.0 before? Because there was a standard, wasn't there?
There are multiple regulatory approaches to this. Our numerology, as it were, for the alliances, when we're ready to launch something, that's what we call 1.0. So we go through different drafts internally with the working groups and kind of getting the documents and the program prepped. When we're ready to launch, we call that 1.0.
This has been in the works forever. What the heck took you so long?
Well, standards work takes time, Rich. You got to do it right to make it good.
So I have to admit that I was poking around the standard earlier today, and it's like 900 pages. Does somebody read and edit and write all that stuff?
Yeah, we have about 200 members participating, different companies that are major players in the IoT space that have been participating in developing the standard and the testing guidance that goes along with it in the questionnaire. So, yep, it's a major lift, and I think that's your answer as to why it's taken a few years for us to get it created.
And you got 200 and some odd people to agree on a standard?
Herding cats. It's my job.
Wow,
Steve
that's pretty impressive
great,
all on its own.
Well, I think
Steve is a great
here,
herder of cats, and that's the nature of the business. And
I think the key here
that's
was,
how you get great things done, is you get a lot of people to agree.
Yep.
I think the key here was agreeing from the start what we wanted the scope to be and the goal and the purpose of our 1.0. And really what we were aiming for 1.0 was not to start with a blank slate and to come up with our own favorite list of our favorite security features that we thought should be in every IoT device, but rather to look at what governments around the world had already established as regulations and requirements for IoT cybersecurity, and to say, here's what the European Union, here's what the US, here's what the UK, here's what Singapore have established as their requirements. And for 1.0, we're just going to start with that. Now, that has a couple of virtues. First of all, it gives us a very objective set of standards to start with. So that avoided probably a couple of years of debating whether somebody's favorite feature should go in. And then the other major virtue is that it allows companies that certify their product relative to our program and our requirements to go to any of those other countries and say, hey, look, I've already met your requirements, so I should be able to get your certification or show that I comply with your regulations. So it's sort of a one-stop shop for manufacturers. Instead of having to go around to all of those different countries and all of the others that will be coming down the pike, they can get one certification and have it qualify for all of these different requirements around the world.
So, but there are so many standards already out there. It seems like it's a waste of time to start from scratch. Why not just pick one that works really well?
We, Tobin.
It's a great point, and it's one of the areas that the members in this working group identified, and this is the general problem, Rich, right? Is that there are different standards. They address certain components and different parts, and as you know, we've already established with some of our other work, especially on the Matter side, we've raised the bar in terms of IoT security on the protocol side, but on the product side, you had such a different mix of different standards. You had different regulatory environments and different levels of work in those regulatory environments. And so really bringing this into this consolidated and unified approach, and again, going back to herding cats and getting the cats all focused in the right direction was really important. And exactly what Steve talked about, it is getting a consistent and reliable, but also a predictable set of security requirements on the product side, so that a product manufacturer doesn't have to go look at, well, this country does it this way. We have this industry spec over here that does it this way. It's coming up with that baseline that really allows predictability and for product manufacturers to do it once and apply it everywhere.
Now, I know that when the marketing folks are looking at Matter, I hear all the time, well, we have Amazon and we have Google. So when you say you're herding cats, are all cats created equal?
Well, yes, whenever we're doing something as a standards group, we have to treat all of our cats or all of our members as equal favorites. So everybody gets a chance to participate, everybody gets a chance to vote on it, and everybody gets a chance to express their point of view. That doesn't mean that everybody necessarily gets their way, otherwise we'd never get anything done. It's a consensus process that we use in the Alliance, like many other standards groups. And if push comes to shove, we have the ability to go to a majority vote. But usually, if we take the time to listen to each other, we're able to settle things without having to vote. Although ultimately, the approval of the spec, that is a vote. Unanimous in this case.
Okay. So the audience is pretty technical. Give me some of the details. How does this actually work?
Sure. So I think the fundamental things, and as you said, it is a long spec, so I won't go through all of it, but fundamental things are as follows. Unique identity for each IoT device so that the consumer can know what they're bringing into their home. Number two, no hard-coded default passwords, because those become backdoors into the device, and we've seen that over and over again with people having their devices attacked from outside using those default passwords. Number three, secure storage for sensitive data on the device to make sure that that data is safe and secure when it's on the device itself. Number four, secure communications of that sensitive data and security relevant information as it's going over the network. And number five, secure software updates throughout the support period. Number six, a secure development process for the device, including vulnerability management, which means having a public way for people to tell you about problems and for you to handle those problems, a standard process. And number seven, documentation for the public regarding the security properties of the device, including the support period. So how long the software updates will be available.
Is there a maximum number of devices that you could have on the network?
No. So let's be clear here. This is not a communications protocol that we're standardizing. It's not like Matter. We've got that already. What this is defining what are the items that you have to have in a device to make it adequately cyber secure for the smart home. And that device might support Matter, or it might not. Maybe it's a legacy device that only supports proprietary protocols. It could be a device that supports Zigbee or Wi-Fi or Thread, or who knows what protocols it supports. What we're looking at here is the inherent security of the device itself.
What is the certification process? If I want to have my device certified, what do I need to do?
So as a manufacturer, you need to first get a copy of the specification, which is freely available from our website. And you go through that, and there is a questionnaire that goes along with that for each of the requirements. You have to supply evidence of your compliance with that requirement. And then you would go to one of our accepted test labs. The Alliance has those around the world, and you would submit this questionnaire along with the evidence, and they will evaluate it to determine whether in fact you do comply and comply adequately with the requirements. If so, then you go forward in the certification process. If not, they're going to tell you where you're falling short, and then you have the opportunity to upgrade your security and come back again.
Are you physically testing, or is this the honor system?
Neither. It's not physical testing. That's a separate thing, and a higher level of assurance. But it is not the honor system either, in that you do have to supply that evidence.
So can you cheat?
Yes, it's certainly possible that a manufacturer could cheat on this, but if they make false representations, there are repercussions for that. The Alliance, for example, could revoke the certification, but there could even be other implications, shall we say, beyond that. Governments, if you made a false representation, could have recourse against that party, but that wouldn't be what the Alliance would do. We would revoke the certification if we found that you had lied or cheated in the representations that you made.
And we have some other safeguards there in that sense as well, right? We do audit in the market. We do periodic audits and to check on actual certifications to see that products are actually complying with that in the field. We don't necessarily always do a universal check, of course, but doing market audits. And then, of course, a consumer or Steve mentioned another party notices or sees that a product is not actually following what it's supposed to be. We have avenues for both for folks to bring that to our attention to be able to take some unilateral action.
But with the number of devices that we're talking about, isn't it possible and even likely to inadvertently, I won't say cheat, but misrepresent without doing it on purpose?
So, Rich, I agree. We're never going to get to the point where all of the devices are absolutely cyber secure. What we're trying to do here is rather like a public health situation. We're trying to raise the overall health of the IoT devices. If every manufacturer is sincerely trying and believing that they are meeting these baseline recommendations, that's a huge boost from where we are today. And that's where we need to get next. Now, might there be another step beyond that? Yes, I think there might, and there probably will be, especially for critical applications, perhaps safety critical devices. But this is a big step forward. And by making it a global certification, I think we found a way to make it affordable for the manufacturers and to offer them a compelling value proposition so that they don't have to spend all their money on redundant certifications, but they can instead get certified once and spend their money on the hard work of making their product secure, which is really what's most important.
You just opened up a whole new discussion. Is it the end device that has to be certified, or is Infineon going to have MCUs that are certified? So if I build my system with it, my system is automatically certified.
So we recognize as the Alliance that there is value in having certified subcomponents, as we call them. So that would include a secure chip or even a software component such as a cryptographic library. And to the extent that a manufacturer uses a certified subcomponent, they can get credit for that towards their certification. Now, that's not enough. You can't just take a security chip, plop it into your device and think that makes you secure. You have to use it. And then there are some things like providing software updates for your device that are on you, the manufacturer. But at least it gives you a leg up there in that you know that, for example, the cryptography, the secure storage, the secure boot, perhaps a unique identity might be provided by the hardware chip, and then you build on top of that.
Steve, I think you and I should go into business doing reference designs. We could pull out these secure components, do a reference design. You could sell that to everybody.
Absolutely. We'll work up a business plan.
Absolutely, for sure. So what's the timeline? If I was part of the committee, did I have a head start? Am I halfway through my design already?
Actually, we've already got some products that have completed the certification process. That's the way we do things at the Alliance. We understand that, as my wife used to say, as a quality assurance engineer, if it's not tested, it doesn't work. So when we're developing a new spec or a new certification program, we have to validate it and make sure it actually works before we're going to unleash it on the world. And so we've already been through 3 rounds of testing on a set of member products, which ran through the program, and will shortly be receiving their certifications. But at this point, the program is open for others to get involved, to get their product certified. I know there are a lot of companies out there that have invested over the last few years in better security for their IoT devices. And until now, they haven't had a clear way to stand out from the crowd, because everybody claims they're secure. But to have an independent certification that validates that you meet these requirements, that gives the consumer something to look for and the manufacturer an opportunity to stand out. So I think that'll be very attractive for the consumers and the manufacturers.
Steve talked about the notion of, or well, Rich, you asked about, will I have a head start kind of getting in? Certainly, the experience and the exposure for what this group has done over the last couple of years gives you a leg up in terms of the expertise and the understanding for how these work. But the intention, of course, is that there's quick update for everybody so that all devices get secure as fast as possible, so that we get that kind of network effect and get everything going. So while it's a long spec, the intention, of course, with all of our standards is that they're straightforward to adopt and get into products or get products acknowledged under the program as well.
Now you said, Steve, there were a few end products that are already certified. When you say end products, do you mean end products like things that will be on Best Buy shelves?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's very interesting. So now the cynical side in me says, will there be lots of devices that are not certified, but they're on the shelves for 40% less than the product that is certified? I'm willing to take that chance to save 40% on my product.
It shouldn't be a 40% price differential between a product that includes cybersecurity and one that doesn't. I would say, well, I don't want to give an exact percentage, but it's certainly not that level of cost. And consumers have said, and there have been some surveys recently and studies that have been done that have validated that they are willing to pay more for a cyber secure product. I will point out as well that there are some jurisdictions where this is going to be a requirement. The UK has a law that was passed more than a year ago that says effective April 29th, 2024, any IoT device sold in the nation, their nation, has to meet certain baseline requirements. And if it does not, there are heavy fines for the manufacturer, the retailer, and the distributor. So that's one of what we see as being a tidal wave of similar requirements coming. The EU's already approved theirs, the Cyber Resiliency Act. Singapore has had one for a few years, at least for internet routers, and other nations may follow. In the US, it seems to be a voluntary program, at least for now.
Okay, I was just going to ask you because I know you're pretty well connected in DC. Do you expect it to ever be mandatory?
I would have a hard time speculating about the future of U.S. politics.
All right, all right. You know I have to ask because I ask you all the time. How about industrial?
Yes, absolutely. We certainly have some of our members who are very interested in an industrial and commercial applications of the mark, and I think that's a potential future direction.
Yeah, I add on to that. If Steve can get good at predicting U.S. policy, that's a real business model that you guys are going to want to chase.
That's
But
for sure. That's for sure.
but on
Now, most
the
people
industrial side, I was going to say on the industrial side, as Steve mentioned, we as an organization we have over 2 decades of experience working with both consumer electronics companies and the whole supply chain, but also the industrial side, smart city, smart energy, utilities, and over the last several months, and I would say with the introduction of Matter and what our members were able to achieve on that side as well, especially on the product security side now, I think there is growing interest on the notion of what this can do in the industrial segment. I know Steve gets asked about this all the time. I get asked about it all the time. I think there is definitely a desire, and if companies want to come into the alliance, that's certainly something that we'd be happy to host and support.
Okay. Now, most experienced engineers will tell you that you never design to a 1.0 spec. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say it's an opportunity. Opportunity, especially if you have already made your product adequately cyber secure, or you're designing the next generation of your product, and you want to see what are the requirements that you're going to be required to meet in the future as you try to ship your product globally. Well, here's a set of requirements that you can build into your design from the start.
Well, that was sort of a leading question. When is 1.1 coming out?
We don't have a date for that. We've started discussions about 1.1 and what will be included. And I think it really depends on what we decide to include. That determines the scope, and that effectively determines how much time will be required.
Okay. Now tell me about the verified mark. What does that mean exactly?
Consumers want to have something that they can find on a product that tells them that it is adequately cyber secure for the smart home. And so the Alliance has developed a verified mark, which says verified product security by Connectivity Standards Alliance. And so that's something that the consumer can look for on the product, or potentially on the website if it's not desired to put it on the product per se. Along with that mark goes a QR code, and the consumer can scan that QR code to get more information about the product and its security properties. Now, the mark is not required. We don't require manufacturers to include it. They might decide, for example, if they're shipping a product into, say, Singapore, to include their mark, or into the US to use the US Cyber Trust mark instead. But our mark is available to them, and the QR code and the accompanying website on the Alliance webpage on the Alliance website to provide more information.
This is great stuff. I applaud what you guys have done. I will say it took you too long, but nonetheless, this is really good stuff. So I thank you.
I would thank Steve and a lot of the member organizations and companies and brilliant engineers. I will tell you, it is a great thing. Steve and I are patient and impatient at the same time. I think we're both pragmatic in terms of how long it takes to kind of get all these cats, whether they're house cats or tigers, all pointed in the same direction. We'll share, one of the parts here that this is a win for consumers, but it's also a win for the device manufacturers, but it's a win for governments too, right? Because if you look at this from the notion that it is not just manufacturers coming together and agreeing on how products are going to get manufactured, you have some of the best security experts and product experts in the world. And so as governments look at what do they need to be thinking about for current policy and future policy, this is a treasure trove of experts to rely on. And the fact that, as Steve talked about, getting to 1.0 for now, and into great work continuing, that's a really big benefit for governments to rely on.
So I just wanted to add, Rich, with respect to how much time this takes, I like to take the long view on IoT cybersecurity. I've been working in this field for more than 25 years now, so I have a little perspective on it. And what I would say is that, yes, it does take a long time. It has taken a long time, but we're seeing some real momentum now. With Matter, we have 10 substantial security features that weren't present in the smart home before. That's the protocol, the communications protocol, and interoperability. Now, with product security, we have this mark which will provide evidence to the consumer, make visible what previously was invisible with respect to the inherent cybersecurity of the product. I think you can think of it sort of like the Energy Star logo and program in the US, or 5-star safety for cars. Before those came along, you couldn't tell whether the car you were buying was safe or how safe it was. And now with that 5-star program and similar ones around the world, it becomes visible to the consumer and they can make an educated decision. They could say, hey, I'm going to have my babies in this one. I want the 5-star. Or they could be like, hey, I want a hot rod and I don't care if it's only 1 star. And I think the same thing will be true, and we want to make that visible to the consumer. Some will choose to get the hot rod IoT device, which has no security. And if that's permitted in their country, then that's their choice. But I think many will choose at least a 4-star and maybe a 5-star approach, something that has our mark on it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you taking some time out of your extremely busy schedules to educate the audience, because this is so important.
Now, here's the story of engineering hero Daire McNamara of Emdalo Technologies and his work on the International Space Station.
At any given moment, 7 scientists, engineers, and pilots are floating 250 miles above our heads. They are the crew of the International Space Station, and they are orbiting the planet at 17,500 miles per hour. On the ISS, astronauts conduct experiments, maintain the spacecraft. They also build stuff, albeit with a little bit more ingenuity than back at home. In-space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing, or ISAM, is an emerging capability for the in-orbit construction of space vehicles and large satellites. The concept is based around a robotic connector called the Intelligent Space System Interface, or ISSI, a common interface bus that physically attaches modular payloads to a space platform called the Orbital Logistics Vehicle, while also transmitting up to 5 kilowatts of power, 1,000 base C Ethernet and CAN bus serial signals, and thermal energy between them. The ISSI hardware is being qualified for spaceflight to NASA's Technology Readiness Level 7, which can only be accomplished by testing the equipment in its intended deployment environment, outside the Japanese ISS experiment module Kibo. During the testing, the ISSI team also flight qualified the microchip PolarFire SoC FPGA used to control the robotic connector and performed an experiment to characterize the radiation environment that electronics were subjected to. But this wasn't the first time the ISSI technology stack had been put through its paces. That began on Earth with embedded engineers.
Hi, my name is Daire McNamara, and I'm a software developer.
Daire McNamara wears a lot of hats. He's a director, project manager, and firmware developer at Emdalo Technologies, an embedded software development firm based outside of Limerick, Ireland, that specializes in a range of engineering disciplines, including chip bring-up.
One of the sort of key jobs in that is, as the chip comes back from manufacture, does it work? Does it do what it's supposed to? Do what they call the boot ROMs, these early pieces of the code in the chip that bring it to life, work? And if they don't work, is there anything that you can do to get in there to fix it?
When the ISSI project got underway, the PolarFire SoC FPGA that lead partner Skycorp had selected as one of the system's primary control platforms had only just hit the market. As a Linux-capable processor built around a RISC-V CPU cluster, tens of thousands of FPGA logic elements, and an advanced memory protection scheme, the PolarFire device checked a lot of boxes for the mission. That said, the technology infrastructure around the processors was still maturing.
At the time, several of the hardware capabilities of the PolarFire SoC were not exposed through the software development kit. Obviously, for the International Space Station, that's a highly reliable environment, and they needed several custom extensions to improve the reliability of it. But from Skycorp's point of view, the rocket was leaving when the rocket was leaving. There was no negotiation on the timeline. So at that point, Skycorp engaged directly with us just to add those custom extensions early for them.
Hello, my name is Dennis Wingo, and I am the Chief Technical Officer of Skycorp Incorporated. The ISSI, we call it the USB of space. So that enables us with a modular standardized connector, just like what we've done in the computer industry, to be able to lower the cost and build large structures in space.
Dennis is a pioneer of in-space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing, and it's his company's orbital logistics vehicle that will use the ISSI as an interconnect for hosting custom payloads. Over some 40 years in the aerospace and electronics industry, he's developed technologies that have flown on all sorts of space systems, from nuclear missiles to the space shuttle to, of course, the International Space Station. So, from a technology adoption standpoint, he has experience with the things that work in aerospace electronics and those that don't.
One of the things that have held space systems back a lot is that traditional aerospace methods are such that everything is done from scratch. The development tools suck. The standard processor for most space applications is still a PowerPC that I first qualified in the early 1990s. They're still using that today with, terrible operating systems and things like that. If I can get something like a RISC-V, especially the microchip PolarFire, which has a crucial element that none of the other processors have, which is error correction at the register level inside of the ASIC side of the SoC and also in the FPGA side. To me, that was a major determinant. The biggest problem we had is that at that time when we started this, which was early in 2020, the PolarFire SoC ecosystem was immature. A lot of the capabilities of the SoC, the drivers, the firmware, the things that make the damn thing work, either were not written or didn't work right.
Skycorp needed help, and quickly.
We were able to get to senior management at Microchip, and what they did, they put us in touch with Daire.
In a past life, Cyril Jean, Associate Director of IP Engineering at Microchip Technology, worked with Daire at a Bluetooth IP company, and now the two are partners in the Microchip Mi-5 ecosystem, where Emdalo was heavily involved with the initial bring-up of the PolarFire SoC, helping with the bootloader and original Linux port, and then later during performance optimization of the hardware and software stack. When Skycorp came to Microchip for help, the perfect candidate to fill the void was obvious.
As Microchip, we can't do somebody's product. That's not really part of what our role is. But we do have people we work with who can do that.
Daire.
From the bootloader to getting to a Linux prompt, that's where he was heavily involved on that initial bring up of the system. And then after that, we could improve performance on part of the system, where he had to really understand both sides of the house, like the software and silicon side.
Back to Daire.
We added keep alive messages to the PolarFire, which enabled Skycorp to detect if there was any problem with any of the subsystems in the experiment and reboot them to restart them if needed. And they needed in-orbit upgrade capability. the ability to upgrade all parts of the design. So the FPGA design underpinning the software, the Linux software that was running on the PolarFire, and even the boot ROM. So we added all those capabilities to the PolarFire SoC.
In all, the work that Daire and his team completed enabled Skycorp and its ISSI partners to capitalize on an architecture they couldn't have before, the Internet of Space Things.
On the space station, they have what's called the Joint Station LAN, which is an Ethernet-based local area network. And then what they do, they encapsulate IP packets in a NASA protocol, and they ship it up to geosynchronous orbit, back to the ground, through all these VPNs and stuff through NASA. And we were able to just use a standard web browser to connect all the way through the VPNs and everything to the payload, through proxy servers and all that. And we were able to operate the experiment in our office. And we actually had the world's first web server on our payload running Yocto Linux on the PolarFire. So we were able to use all modern tools to enable us to do this in a very cost-effective manner.
The ISSI platform successfully completed flight qualification earlier this year and was returned to Earth in a SpaceX Dragon capsule. It's being sent to a lab for analysis, after which Skycorp and its partners will reveal their findings in IEEE journals, likely by the end of the year.
You know, even though we played a very minor role in the life of the International Space Station, for us it was an incredibly uplifting experience to be involved. We watched the launch of the Northrop Grumman craft that delivered our experiment to the International Space Station. We watched the live feed from NASA of the docking of the shuttle. We watched the astronauts unpack it and repackage it for it to go outside on the Japanese platform. We've monitored its behavior, how it's working, and it's worked really well all year. We're really looking forward to see how it survived its year in space.
But just because the flight qualification portion of the ISSI project is complete doesn't mean the impact of the work Daire and his team at Emdalo did on the PolarFire SoC has diminished. In fact, just the opposite.
There were some bugs that Daire and their team has helped us work through, and then we become part of that larger ecosystem because that gets propagated on GitHub to the next release of Yocto, the common kernel, which is leading to the PolarFire being part of the Ubuntu ecosystem as well. And so all of these things that we do and that Daire is doing is helping a wider ecosystem. And I think this is an important thing for all embedded engineers, is that we have individual stars. Daire is a star. There's lots of folks like Daire out there. You can have, an individual can have a much, much wider impact, no matter what you're working on, if you're part of a community, you're part of a team, to where you can make this stuff happen. And these types of activities that lower the barriers to entry to people really help us all.
Next up for Daire, the team at Emdalo, and their partners at Skycorp, currently they're working on deploying the world's first data center on the moon.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Embedded Insiders. For more daily news, videos, and podcasts, visit our website at embeddedcomputing.com.